Hey, Miss Gina, how you doing, baby? Let me get this pulled up right here. What's up, Josh? I wonder why Joe Kent is running around making all these appearances on all these other social media platforms. There's got to be an underlying motive, and it just seems like he's trying to persuade everybody he can against Trump. I don't fucking get that, but let's hear what this idiot's got to say.
I mean, trust them like you're in a relationship with them. Yeah, you may fight once in a while. Every marriage has its difficulties and stuff like that. But even if, can you look at any intelligence relationship, whether it's with one of the Five Eyes or any type of ally around the world, and say, you know what, this actually is like a good marriage, and what they say, we can always kind of take at face value. Is that possible at all?
I just don't think we should do that. I think with like the Five Eyes, usually if we're talking about like a counterterrorism target or whatever, sure. But even like us and the Five Eyes partners, we have differences of policy opinion all the time. So I just don't. I think we do ourselves a disservice when we get so comfortable with a partner that we just take it, face value. Whatever they say is as good as if we collected it ourselves.
Yeah. Now going back to the Israelis though, and their intelligence that you were talking about, I think one thing we've probably been guilty of here in America points over the
that lady's talented when it comes to food, Miss Gina, for sure.
Last 20 years is not being able to read a room sometimes. So we have our own egg on our face with that. However,
Joe Kent was somebody up in, I want to say, the CIA intelligence officer of some kind. He did some kind of investigations for the White House, and he stepped down. But if you listen to some of these guys like that Baron Technical, I think his name is, he said this dude didn't really have no real say in anything, that he made a lot of, I don't know. I just know he worked for the damn government.
I can't even describe in words how much it appears the Israelis cannot read the room right now when it comes to how certain they are of what they need to be doing, more specifically what they need us to be doing, and that we should never even be questioning it because they're just our greatest ally and everything. When, I haven't checked the literacy rates in Israel in a while, but I think they're quite high. And, I can read a poll. I'm sure they can read a poll too. It's not looking great.
No,
for them. And it's not looking great, including people in our own government in some cases. So why are they still so confidently gung ho saying, yeah, we're going to do this. That's what you're going to do. Joe, step in line. This is what we got.
I think in many ways they're going for broke. I think they realize that Donald Trump being a baby boomer is the last.
Joe Kent served as the director of national counterterrorism in the second Trump administration from July 25th or July 2025 until he resigned on March 17th, 2026. Prior to leading to the NCTC, he briefly served as acting chief of staff to director of national intelligence.
Regardless of being it just is what it is. Regardless of being a Republican or a Democrat, Trump is the last truly pro-Israel president that they're going to get in the White House. So I think they're like, let's go for it right now. Also, they think post October 7th, everything, all the battlefield gains they've had, this is the time to just stay on the gas and keep going. I think there are some in Israel who are just like, if we don't slow this down right now, because of the polling and because of the way that the younger demographic in America is voting and thinking, if they don't slow down and check themselves a little bit, that they're going to lose the relationship.
I know what got everybody started wanting to talk to Joe Kent was him coming out and saying that when he tried to investigate foreign countries being tied back to the Charlie Kirk assassination, he was saying that he was stopped, and that kind of picked everybody's eyes up. So
in the long term, but I think the people that are in power inside Israel right now, Likud party, I don't think they give a damn. And I also think they still very confidently, and there's, they're not wrong in thinking this, when it comes down to exerting raw political power inside of America, they can still do it with money. I mean, look at Thomas Massey's congressional primary. I mean, they spent close to 40 million, I think, when it's all said and done. A lot of that money we can't even track, to take out one congressman, right? Because it's Massey, and he was saying things they don't like. Yeah. And then the vote yesterday, which was pretty historic.
Which should open everybody's eyes up, right? Because Thomas Massey wasn't a bad congressman. You should have people that oppose. It can't all be yes men.
Had 103 Democrats voted to not fund Israel, and Massey was the lone Republican, which is that's black eye to my party, to the Republicans. But they won. The only one. So they still think, even though that is significant, because I think a couple years ago you would not have gotten 4, let alone 104 representatives of any party to say that. But that said, the bill still didn't pass. So I still think there's a lot of there, Miriam Adelson and these big donors that are just like, let them throw their tantrums on podcasts, and we'll still win in the end, because in the American system, you can flood the zone with endless money, and we have endless money.
Well, we saw what happened to, I think his name was Frank Church, back in the 70s when he brought up that commission. I believe it was that, we can check this, Steve, it's been a while, but I believe it was the next election. He was primaried with a lot of dark money and sent out. And so when people start barking up the wrong tree, they'll do that. That said, if there's a little silver lining here with the Massey thing, and we'll see what happens with Ro Khanna in his next primary, it's like the place where they could most do that is a closed primary, because and depends on the state and the district, but in a lot of these states, it's like only people registered under that party can vote. It's not a November election, so it's lower turnout. It's also lower turnout because it's a primary, not a general. So like technically you could flood the boomers' TVs and maybe get enough people to go vote for a warm body. Trump's words, not mine. Anyway, but I think if Massey went into, say, a general election for, I don't know, the Senate in Kentucky right now, I think they'd be very surprised at how not far their money goes in that kind of thing.
Yeah, and if you extrapolate it onto a national scale, I mean, it took them 40 million for a congressional seat. Like, somebody else can do the math there, but there's 435 congressional seats. Can you spend whatever that 40 times? Can you spend that much on a national stage, especially if the younger generation is watching podcasts, they're on social media? The fundraising push that Massey did to fight back against that, especially the couple online campaigns that he had, were very, very significant. And they could potentially be game changers. So, I mean, for people who are frustrated with the political system and the money involved, the small dollar donor contributions that go to individual candidates and not PACs, et cetera, that is kind of how we can potentially break through a lot of that. And I think just the way that the demographics are changing, and as those demographics change, it's going to be harder and harder for AIPAC and other groups to come in and just straight up buy these seats.
I agree. And I think it's also a matter of, people are so focused on it because of the actual influence within legalized which is what it is. Like we gotta look in the mirror with that. Like AIPAC is a legal organization. They're doing what they are legally allowed to do, and we don't change that. But like, because there is that kind of influence happening, obviously there's a massive sight on that, because they're also in the middle of a big problem in the Middle East that people have large opinions about. But what ends up happening as well is then all the focus will go on that. And I understand that, but then focus moves away from other threats as well. It moves away from, hey, what the fuck is China doing here? By the way, it's hilarious to see you get called like an Islamist or whatever, jihadi online. You spent 25 years fighting them. I think there's nobody who understands, certain places that may not like us very much like you. What you seem to be attacked for is the fact that you are just pragmatically saying, unfortunately, the world has some evil in it. And as much as you want to be the good guy at all times and cleanse the world of all that, it's an imperfect place, and you can't just go invading places because you think they're bad and, whatever. There has to be stakes to it. Otherwise, we'd be invading China right now. For how long have they been massacring the Uyghurs? Since fucking Vietnam.
Yeah,
whatever.
Everywhere.
I don't know. A long time. But we don't do that, because we can't do that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've always said, like, if the bar for us going to war and getting involved in a country is that country is doing something bad, they're oppressing their people, then you better start the draft, because we're going to need to put like hundreds of thousands of millions of men and women under arms, and we're going to need to invade. I don't know, throw a dart at the map, and there's probably a government somewhere doing something that we don't approve of here in America.
Right.
And so the whole thing is just it's ridiculous. I mean, our founders had it right when they said, don't go abroad looking for monsters to slay. Have good trade and commerce for everybody. Don't have alliances that get you sucked into other people's cousins' wars, and that's what we have been unable to resist temptation for most of the history of our republic. And if we don't change that here really quickly, because of how spread thin we are with the empire, and I think this war in Iran, because of the energy implications and all that, I think this could be, an event that jumpstarts a lot of the downfall of the American empire. And I would just say, America's really blessed with what we have here at home. What has the empire, the post-World War II empire that we're supposed to worship, what has that gotten most Americans? Like, most lives have actually gotten a lot worse because we're trying to prop that up. What if we reverse that and we prioritized our nation's defense and then the prosperity of our country ahead of the empire?
Just like every country around the world does.
Like everybody else, yeah.
It's not like when people are like, oh, it's a selfish thing. It's like, no, that's what every country is supposed to do. And then once you take care of something at home, if there's things you can work on friendly with other places, go ahead and do it. I don't know why this is so hard. But you raised the point at a really interesting time as well, because we just had the 250th anniversary of this country. I would imagine you're a guy that's studied the Revolutionary War pretty closely.
Yeah.
Fair to say?
Yeah.
I love it too. And I've studied it for a long time. And obviously coming up on the anniversary, I got to do some podcasts on it. That was really, really cool.
What's up, though,
it's amazing how prescient some of these guys were. And you talk about like the foreign influence aspect. Washington famously warned about it in his closing speech / written out speech that he published in the paper about staying away from foreign interests. And, you look at the people throughout history who were tested by the times too. George Washington was able to win the Revolutionary War in part because of the help of the French, who came in with especially naval power and overall support to be able to work with them against the British. And just call it a decade later, roughly, he's faced with the moment where suddenly France has an enormous problem with the French Revolution that is not in America's interest at all. And even though they had been this ally that he wanted to be friendly to, he was like, yeah, we can't get involved in that war. Yeah. And you know what? It turned out okay. They were pissed. It took a decade or two. But then, Napoleon came in and did his thing, and suddenly things were fine. Like, it feels like the hardest thing to do is nothing at all. And we always fucking do something in post-World War II America, and we haven't learned that lesson.
We haven't. And just the track record is abysmal. I mean, it's never worked out the way that we say it's going to work out. It always ends up being a long quagmire. Our country ends up with, thousands more dead because of it, and then trillions in debt. And that's what we have right now. I think the 250th anniversary is a good time for us to reflect on like where we are, especially in the post, World War II, we're the global superpower in that era, and just see where we are. And at the end of the day, because you always hear, when people try to justify this war or Ukraine, they'll lay out the risk board and they'll be like, yeah, if we choke off the Straits here, then that's going to really hurt China. And it's always like this really involved, game that they're playing. And it's like, at the end of the day, whenever we try and play these games, we end up losing in some way, shape, or form. Now I'm not saying if someone comes over here and messes with us, if they come over here and mess with us, then we do have to go take care of business. We do have to defend our borders. I'll get labeled as an isolationist, a dove, or anti-war or whatever. Like, I'm not. If someone screws with us, like, we should go and salt the earth if we need to. However, us going and trying to prop up all these different, aspects of our empire, controlling strategic, control. I mean, Trump the other day was talking about how like we're going to be the guardians of the Straits of Hormuz. Like, how absurd is that?
How would that even work?
And even if it did work, like, how much would that affect people here in New Jersey? Hey, guys in, Hoboken, New Jersey, you're now the guardians of the Straits of Hormuz. Most of them rightfully would be like, where the hell are the Straits of Hormuz? It's like, well, we have to secure that so we can get the gas over here. It's just like the whole thing is absolutely absurd. So I don't know. I think if we don't rein that in here really, really soon and start like single-mindedly focusing on what's in our interest, a lot of the system's going to come crumbling down, like with what's taking place with the Straits, what's going to start happening with the dollar. We're already seeing the end, or the petrodollar being significantly threatened, which goes after us, our status as a global reserve currency holder.
Can you explain that to people? Like, we all hear terms like petrodollar and stuff like that. If we're not in the financial markets every day or in intelligence, a lot of people out there, smart people I talk to, are like, yeah, I don't fully understand that. So like, we're in 4th or 5th grade, me included. Yeah. How would you explain that, and how maybe close we are to a cliff with the petrodollar suddenly being point of no return?
Yeah, I mean, so basically at the end of everything kind of goes back to the end of World War II, we're the dominant power. And so most countries, world banks, they say that they will settle their transactions. They'll do trade, the trade of natural resources, massive commerce deals. They'll do all of that in the dollar, which means people want the dollar, which means basically here in America, we can print money. It's a bad idea, but we can just sort of print money. We can run these big debts because everybody needs the dollar. And so us having deficit spending here in America doesn't matter because the rest of the world is going to continue to use the dollar. Now, when the petro market really came alive, the oil and producing states in the Gulf said, hey, we will settle all of our oil transactions in the dollar. That basically means that every single bit of oil, natural gas, energy that gets pumped out of Saudi Arabia, the Persian Gulf, et cetera, we're in that transaction. We didn't lift a finger, but we're getting a cut. We're getting a taste because they're all using the dollar. And this has been a system the whole world has agreed upon. This is why you years ago heard guys like Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan say that us using sanctions against different countries and stopping them from using the dollar is shooting ourselves in the foot. And they're 100% right. And sanctions can be a decent tool to use against countries. But the sanctions we talked about with Iran were sort of working. Now, if you go and you sanction a major country like the Biden administration did against the Russians and told Russia, the world's largest natural resources producer, that you guys can't use the dollar anymore, well, who does that hurt more? Does it hurt more us more or Russia more in the long run? I mean, Russia has commodities that people want because it's natural resources. Right. They're not selling, intellectual property like we are here in America. They're selling real hard resources. And so that transaction we're not in on anymore. We got cut out of it. Now, the same thing is happening because because of the war in Iran. For a long time, the petrodollar system existed because we said that we would provide the security guarantees. We would be the guarantors of the security of all those different Gulf states there. We'd put our military bases there and they'd be safe because Uncle Sam was there in their backyard. Well, we kicked off this war with Iran, and what did the Iranians do? The Iranians hit our bases. Number one, we couldn't fight wars from our bases, which is absurd that we even have them over there in the first place. We had to evacuate the bases. But number two, because we had the bases there and we launched attacks against Iran, Iran hammered a lot of the infrastructure of those Gulf states. So now a lot of those Gulf states are saying, like, I don't know, maybe we're going to start looking at some alternatives to the dollar because they're not happy with us. And you're even seeing a lot of the transactions now that are coming out of the Straits of Hormuz, those are being settled in yuan, crypto, and other currencies. And so you're starting to see the end of the petrodollar, which between that and what we did in Russia, and we've kind of created this alliance too by sanctioning different countries. You sanction Iran that has tremendous oil and natural gas resources. You sanction Russia, world's biggest natural resources producer. You've got China there in the mix. China can easily go to them and be like, hey, I've never started a proxy war with you guys. Like, why don't you guys settle your transactions in the yuan? I'll help you guys convert all this onto the world stage. And that is what we've seen China do in this conflict. And so if China is ostensibly, some people are really hawkish on China. They say they're our number one rival, or the enemy we got to worry about. Someday we're going to end up fighting China. I don't agree with that theory of the case. But if China is what we need to worry about, and I think to a certain extent we should be worried about China, then what we've done in the Gulf has completely and totally worked against our own interests. So really, at the end of the day, if we have enough countries throughout the world that say they're going to no longer use the dollar, or if they don't even say it, if they just stop using the dollar, that erodes our system. That means this deficit system that we have here in America, our entire financial system, it's not going to collapse overnight, but it could slowly start to erode. And that's where you're going to see out of control inflation. We've seen this before. This is what happened in pre-World War II Germany. I mean, this is what happened in Argentina in the 1980s. So this is very dangerous. We've had a very good deal for a very long time. And by us attempting to control other countries through the barrel of the gun and through sanctions, we're eroding our number one asset. And that was everybody using the US dollar.
Yeah, it seems like the typical groupthink scenario over time where people are like, yeah, we'll do it this time.
Yeah.
We can do it another time. We'll stop this at some point. And then you just keep pressing that button over and over again. And eventually Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
on the financial scale.
That's not great. But with the Strait of Hormuz now, we can get to the MOU in a little bit and what the fuck is going on there. But were you a part of, without going into anything classified, were you a part of any discussions in the build up to the war, mapping out probable scenarios that the Strait of Hormuz could be locked off by the Iranian government in the event of war?
I mean, the U.S. government has done these war games since the 80s.
Right.
And that's always been the scenario. I mean, so yeah, I was, but that's not like Joe Kent wasn't sitting there with a map being like, guys, you know, like, this has literally been DOD and IC war games since I was in grade school. So this was known. We led ourselves to believe, because of the 12-day war, and I think some of the hubris from Venezuela, that the Iranians were a paper tiger. Because when the 12-day war kicked off, a lot of us, and I was in this camp too, I thought the Iranians were going to use their proxies, and I thought they were going to hammer us. But the guys in Iraq. But basically what they did in February, I thought they were going to do, a lot of us thought they were going to do when the Israelis attacked in the 12-day war. Now, we stayed out of that, and the Iranians were like, well, we're not happy that we're being attacked right now, but we know the Americans are like, they're helping Israel. They're paying for all this, but they're not attacking us.
Right.
So, I mean, we saw it after we did Midnight Hammer, the Israelis shot back a volley of ballistic missiles to an empty quadrant of one of our bases in Qatar. They let us know ahead of time they were going to shoot at an empty quadrant of one of our bases in Qatar. And then they wanted to get right back to the negotiating table. Now, a lot of us breathed a sigh of relief, and we're like, wow, that could have been a lot worse. Hopefully the negotiations can work. The Israelis and the people who are more hawkish went to the president and said, see, they're a paper tiger. They can't do anything. But we had I think we had pretty clear eyes at the time of like, their proxies are still intact. They still have ballistics. They still have drones. If they wanted to, they could make this thing really, really bad. And like I said, for years, we knew that the worst case scenario, if Iran was truly threatened, they would play their geographic trump card, which is the Straits of Hormuz. Like, you don't need to be a genius to look at that and be like, wow, if you don't need a lot of technology to really be a menace there in the Straits, just because it's so narrow and it's so critical.
Did you discuss this with Pete Hegseth? I mean, he's the Secretary of War.
Yeah,
he knew.
He knew.
So when he was saying, though, towards the beginning of the war, and has continued to say, we've totally obliterated all of and I'm sure they've obliterated some things, but like, I don't know, 1 + 1 usually equals 2. If you're policing the Strait of Hormuz, something's not obliterated, right?
The problem is, we speak and we say that we've destroyed their Navy, their Air Force, we destroyed their conventional forces to a certain extent, but their conventional forces were never the real power. The real power was in the IRGC, which is different than their military. It's also in a lot of their...
Yeah, but listen, so if what Joe was saying yesterday, then that means that Iran has overplayed their hand and the Straits of Hormuz is going to be obsolete. So why they're even talking about this now? Things change so fast, with all this shit. And we'll see.
The besiege. But then the way that the Iranians dispersed a lot of their capabilities, especially ballistics, the production of ballistics, drones, the way that they dispersed a lot of those capabilities, when we went and we hit their conventional Navy, I mean, it's pretty easy for us to see satellites, like where those naval assets are. They have a lot of coastline, but it's not that big. So yeah, we blew it up.
What's up, pimp?
The Iranians aren't dumb. They knew we were going to do that.
Right.
So they weren't going to use those capabilities to go shut down the Straits of Hormuz. They were going to use what they're using right now. Like whenever a tanker goes outside of where the Iranians say the tanker can go, they don't hit all of them, but they hit enough of them to slow down the shipments. It's usually a drone. It's usually a low-tech drone that they're hitting them with. So it's dang near impossible, short of us occupying, the vast majority of Iran militarily, for us to stop that capability. Because literally, you and I could go 3D print some drones and we could sit up on the hills there with some binoculars, and we could probably have a run at shutting down the Straits of Hormuz too.
It's kind of fun, right?
Probably kind of fun. Yeah. I mean, and the same thing, fishing ships too. Like you throw enough dhows out there and every single one of them has one mine. You drop those mines in, like, okay, well, now the shipping industry is like, well, I'm not going to have one of my ships go to the bottom. Like, we're just not going to send the ships through.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because it's so small, the train, et cetera, like it's almost impossible to shut down. So we can come out every day and we can be like, last night we bombed X amount of whatever, boats, military targets, and it's really not going to affect the problem. This is why, and this leads us into the MOU. This is why we got into the MOU. And you saw Trump come out and say this. He didn't say there was no military solution, but he said, like, we got to come up with something because we're up against, an economic cliff, right? He said that. I mean, the president said it publicly. That's why we got in the MOU. And the only reason he accepted getting into the MOU is because, like, we went through, a month or so of like, we're going to bomb the crap out of them. And at some point it's like, well, we're bombing them, but it's not really having any effect.
Yeah. And when you guys are making any intelligence related decisions on any actions that are going to happen, obviously at least one part of the report is like downstream economic effect of what said action may cause and stuff like that. How much in the conversations you were around, how much did like playing out the scenarios of what will happen to the economy and the stock market weigh in on decision making?
No, not enough. I mean, from the IC side, that wasn't really like our wheelhouse, but we had smart people there from commerce, from treasury. I mean, look, I think we just got too cocky and we thought they wouldn't shut down the Straits of Hormuz. I think we convinced ourselves that because they didn't do it during the 12-day war, that they just simply weren't going to do it.
Why didn't they do it during the 12-day war?
Because they wanted to negotiate with us and we didn't get overtly involved. They knew that we were involved. They knew that we were helping the Israelis, but we didn't take any American strikes. And then when we did, we messaged right away. So Trump, dropped the bombs on Midnight Hammer, and then he came out right away of a press conference.
Right.
And at the same time, we were saying to the Iranians, like, hey, we want this to be done. And now we don't need to talk about that stuff anymore. Let's get back to the negotiating table. And to my surprise, and everyone's surprised, the Iranians said, yeah, okay, let's do that. Let's get back to the negotiating table. We got the Israelis through a tantrum. Let's get back to the negotiating table. Yeah,
you were saying earlier how, like in the past, the way you'd kind of get back channels to Iran would be through proxies, whether it be Iraq or Qatar and stuff like that. But once these hot wars are happening effectively, whether it's the 12-day war or this one, are we in an understanding where, like, I never remember how to pronounce their names, but the dude with the goatee who goes on the TV all the time with Iran, like a guy like that literally calls the White House and they have direct conversations? Does it get to that point, or is it still there's an intermediary every time and we never really are talking to each other until you actually see JD Vance face to face with them negotiating?
So the Iranians, especially since we killed the Ayatollah, the Iranians have been pretty adamant they won't directly meet with us. Mm-hmm. So the Iranians are going through different intermediaries, Pakistanis, Qataris.
And why would they? I heard that somewhere else today too, right? Like every time that they met with somebody from America, they fucking assassinated them. Yeah, I wouldn't trust them either.
The Omanis are in there as well. So. Yeah, and we've used Geneva, et cetera. So there's different mechanisms, what they always say. But I think our ability to actually have those direct talks were going on before the 12-day war. They're happening right after. But since this iteration of the war, they're limited. Even when they were doing talks, there were still intermediaries in the room. And so there always was a procedure there. The Iranians are very procedural. The Iranians were very bureaucratic as well, and they can be frustrating. Yeah, they can be very frustrating, I think, to attempt to work with. But yeah, so right now it's not direct, and that's a huge problem. And I think since we've killed the Ayatollah, we've taken a lot of that off the table. I think pre-killing the Ayatollah, I think President Trump probably could have gone directly to the Iranians. Like had he said, like I'm going to have my Nixon moment and go to China, he went to Tehran, I think he could have pulled that off. Or I think he could have gone to Qatar and met them in Qatar, and said, send the president over here. Let's just hash this out. Because, President Trump, that's his thing. It's strength. And now there's folks who say that the Iranians messed that up because they should have, said that they wanted to meet President Trump ahead of the 12-day war. And they would have had that opportunity. They may have been able to have that opportunity. I just don't know if we're going to get back to that place anytime soon because of killing the Ayatollah. And again, that goes back to what I've been saying the whole time. The Israelis were genius because they wanted us to get into a situation that we couldn't extract ourselves from. And even if we wanted to extract ourselves from, how willing would the Iranians be? Now the Iranians can't be willing to directly negotiate with us or talk with us.
Well, they also keep trying to kill the fucking negotiators over and over again.
Yeah, multiple times. And Trump even came out and said that like really early on. He's like, well, I can't say who I'm talking to because I'm afraid they'll get killed.
Yeah, it's like Malaka, read the room. It's right there. The answer's in front of your face.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is why I said from the very first interview I gave with Tucker, I was like, step one's restraining the Israelis, and people got really mad at me. People got really mad at me for saying that, but it's just like it's borne out to be true because you even have the president tweeting in all caps like Israel is prohibited from striking Lebanon, and within hours they're like, let's go ahead and level a couple apartment complexes, and they've obviously made the president frustrated because he's come back out and said, they need to stop doing that. If you're trying to kill one guy, you don't need to level the whole apartment complex. But the problem is, and this is what I keep going back to, people will always ask me now whenever President Trump comes out with a statement that's like generally trying to restrain Israel or saying something against the Israelis, they're like, well, what do you think about that? It's like, until we actually take something away from them, like they're not going to take us seriously. Like it's basically all pro wrestling, even if the president means it. And I'm not saying he doesn't mean it, but the Israelis are going to be like, okay, well, what's he going to do though? You know, it's like with my kids. Like I have this conversation with my kids all the time. Whenever they do something they know they're not supposed to do, I have to say, like, you understand, like I'm not punishing you because like I want to, or I get some satisfaction from it. If I don't take away something from you right now, you're going to repeat the same behavior. And that's literally where we're at with the Israelis. They won't respect us until we take something away from them.
Well, you're assuming we're the
Matt Morris dude has got called up. What happened to Matt Morris, man?
adult and they're the kid.
Well, we're paying for everything. That's the thing. Like I'm not saying 100% our rationale is always right, but at the end of the day, if we allow emotion and how we feel about them or how we feel about the region to get in the way, the simple math is
I watch Matt Morris sometimes. What happened to him?
We are paying for their military. We are paying for a good deal of their defense. If they say they can do it on their own, then Godspeed. I hope you can. But as long as we're giving this much, we get to call the shots.
It's the most, and that's what you said from day one since you left office. It's like it's the most obvious thing though, but that doesn't happen, which begs the question beyond just like Mary Madison having a lot of money from Vegas.
Yeah.
Why? But here's the thing about Trump. There's never been a guy in politics that I've seen who is more hyper aware of polling and where the polls than Donald Trump. I mean, he would find polls 10 years ago when he was running that no one has ever heard of since. And what he had a real understanding of is he knew it wasn't like a criminal trial. It was like a civil trial. All he needed to have was the scale just barely twinge this way, and he could go all in on that thing because the math was on his side. And he would always follow that. That's why, you know, the famous first words of like, we're going to build a wall, you know, because he saw the math was on his side with some immigration issues and stuff. And he went all the way in on it, despite the fact that then some people really hated him for it. He knew he had it on his side. So I look at all these polls he's followed over the years, and yet two polls that stand out that he just seems to.
He reports on the news about like old Dave Hookstead, except for he ain't quite as, you know, gun ho, kill, death.
Like, you know, like a horse with blinders on, not look at, or just decide to amnesia ignore, I don't know, are related to like Epstein and Israel. And so to your point, now we've seen in some recent weeks, like he's said some interesting things, but then it doesn't get back. I saw a tweet the other day where it was like President Trump has told Benjamin Netanyahu to pull his troops out of Lebanon and Syria. 2 hours later, Benjamin Netanyahu has told Donald Trump to go fuck himself. Nothing happens. Nothing gets taken away. Why?
That's the big, I mean, this has been a question that I struggle with, and I've articulated it publicly. And, you know, here's the problem. President Trump knew at an instinctual level, like everything we talked about in the first Trump administration, he understood that the Middle East was quicksand and you can't get sucked into the quicksand. He also understood as a candidate when he was going after, you know, his former adversary, now friend, Marco Rubio, he said Marco Rubio is just going to do what Sheldon Adelson says. He's going to give him all the money. He's going to do what AIPAC says. Trump knew that. He called it out. He understood how these things worked. He also, at the beginning, like I said, at the beginning of this administration, the president was not interested in this conflict with Israel. People will say, no, Joe, you don't know what you're talking about. When I was there and he was getting the briefings, he was not interested in it. He wanted the negotiations to work. He wanted a Nobel Peace Prize. He thought that he could cut a deal. He thought that every other president, and I think there was a lot to back that up, had, you know, not been able to get a good deal with Iran because they were weak or because they were dumb. And he thought that he could get a very good deal with Iran, and he was off to a good start. Something in the spring, late spring, early summer timeframe happened. I don't know what happened. I can't tell you why. 2025. Yeah. I can't tell you why his mentality changed, but it went from like, we're going to create the most space that we can for the negotiations to take their course, and we're not interested in a war. We got other things to do, like everything else he ran on in 2024, to, okay, we're going to support the Israelis and we're going to do Midnight Hammer and we're going to continue to entertain this. I don't know what happened. And so for me, when something like that happens from an intelligence background, you do have to step back and look at, okay, so what else could be influencing the president? Like if he's the president, he makes the ultimate decision here. Did he just change his mind? And I have a hard time believing that Donald Trump, like you said, the guy who can look at polling and understand which side of the issue to be on. And the president also, too, I think is very good at intuiting vibes, for lack of a better term. He was the first like Twitter social media president. I mean, the president can take a large swath of data. And I think this is probably why he was successful in real estate and in construction. He can take a large swath of data, and maybe he doesn't know every last little detail of it, but he understands the general theme and he can make a really quick assessment.
Yes.
And for him not to see where this whole thing was going to end up, I just don't buy it. And I know there's people out there who hate Donald Trump and they're like, see, I told you, he's just dumb and he fell for the whole thing. I have a really hard time believing that. And maybe I'm putting too much stock in him. However, I just don't think I don't think he changed his mind. And I don't think he was like deceived or tricked. I think there was a fair amount of deception and trickery that was on there. So he definitely got a lot of bad information. They definitely played to his ego. They definitely told him it was going to be easy. That's all true. But for him to go through with it, ultimately, I do think there's potentially, I don't know 100%, but I think there's potentially other factors there. And so what could those other factors be? What influences a president? Why would a president make decisions that he doesn't agree with? If you just look at what happened to President Trump with the assassination attempts, I think that those things could factor in. He came within a fraction of an inch of having his head blown off on national TV. I looked into the Butler investigation.
Pimp, you never gonna get no money out of Snaggy. Snaggy broke, dude.
You can get into that, basically.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. It's funny you read my mind on this. I was gonna ask.
Old Snaggy was trying to flex on us yesterday. Oh, fucking poor old Snags. He's found himself in the bottom of the bottle one more day.
About that.
Yeah. So
why does Donald Trump not get curious about that case? This is a guy who remembers enemies from 1964 in fucking high school.
Yeah, that's a huge data
Maggie done stole this fucking soldering iron and he's gone off the fucking deep end.
point. I mean, so I'll get into Butler, but you have Butler, you have West Palm Beach, and then he comes into office and it's like, we don't make any changes to security detail. As a matter of fact, some of the same people who were on duty then get promoted. Then there's multiple breaches of his, public breaches of his security that happened. There's the stoppage at the UN.
Oh, he was just off the fucking chain. I don't mind Snaggy. Snaggy don't bother me, but damn, I don't want to argue with son of a bitch 24/7, man. That's just not my style. You know what I mean?
On the escalator, there's the armed police officer who comes up and shakes his hand, who wasn't part of the president's detail. Everyone's like, how'd the guy have a gun get in here? Well, he put on a cop uniform. Well, he was a cop, but he walked in and did it, and then it made the paper, and it was a huge embarrassment. And then you have the restaurant.
He's hurt, bro. Snaggy is going through something. Y'all think what you want, but Snaggy is addicted to alcohol and he doesn't know what to do. He can't help himself. And he just doesn't have a want. That's why he always has to brag about what he's got and all that shit. I hate it for him. I hate it for him. Sooner or later, they're going to find him fucking passed out somewhere like never, ever.
In Washington, D.C., when Trump and the cabinet are going to go out and show how safe Washington, D.C. is, Code Pink reserves a table right next to them. They wait for the president to come in and they jump up and do their Code Pink thing where they yell at him or whatever. It's just Code Pink. It was harmless, but still, it shows that someone got the president's itinerary and they knew exactly where he was going to be sitting. So between the breaches of the security, between the assassination attempts, what does that tell the president? If you have Donald Trump's mind where you can take in a large amount of data, that lets you know that you're not safe. That like the people that are around you, you're the most powerful man in the world. They can't keep you safe. He's got a lot of kids. He's got a lot of grandkids who I think he does love dearly. And I think he has concern for them. It also says that, okay, they can't be kept safe either. Then in the interim period between Operation Midnight Hammer, when Trump tried to get us out of this disaster that the Israelis attempted to get us into, and what happened in February where the war restarts in September, you have one of the most vocal advocates against the Iran war, who was in the Oval Office advocating against the Iran war in the lead up to Midnight Hammer, Charlie Kirk, also publicly assassinated. Yeah. Now, we can talk about any of the, I don't know if there was potential linkage there. I would say what it is right now.
But you were stopped from looking into that.
We were stopped from looking into it. But if you put all those on a timeline and you say, what else could be affecting the president that I'm looking at right now? You have to factor that in. If this was a foreign country and I was looking at it from an intelligence perspective, I would have to factor all that in. Now, with Butler happened obviously under the Biden administration. When we came in January of 2025, there was a lot of us who were eager to get to the bottom of lots of things that happened during the Biden administration. Butler was like top on my list. It was top on lots of people's lists. And so I came in, I said, all right, let's figure out what happened with Butler, because what happened on the ground didn't make sense. But then there's also been a bunch of innuendo where people said Iran tried to kill the president. So I said, okay, I want to get to the bottom of this, and I want to figure out if Iran had anything to do with trying to kill the president for, killing. At the time, it was vengeance for killing Qasem Soleimani. So I said, when I came back in from the intelligence community perspective, I said, show me all the intelligence that we have on assassination attempts against President Trump, Iranian involvement. When I got into the Butler file, this wasn't publicly disclosed at the time. This is all out in the public sphere now. There's a guy named Asif Merchant. He was just tried in New York. He's a Pakistani national who ostensibly was recruited by the Iranians to come here to America and find a way to kill President Trump. Merchant is arrested 2 days before Butler. Right before he's arrested, he's in a hotel room, and he hires a guy who he says is a sniper, and he reports back up to the Iranians, I've got a sniper, and that's how I'm going to kill President Trump at one of his rallies. So I read this, and I'm like, well, what happened to the sniper? We know what happened to Merchant. I got it. He's in jail. What happened to the sniper? It's, I have to do some asking around. FBI comes back and they say, well, don't worry about that guy. He's one of our informants. And okay, I'm like, all right, he's one of your informants, huh? Okay.
The sniper?
The sniper. Because he was never a sniper. He wasn't a sniper. He basically just kind of tricked Merchant into saying, sniper. Merchant doesn't seem to be the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah. So that's the guy they picked to.
Yeah. So Merchant's in jail. I said, okay, well, I've ran a lot of sources in my time overseas. And when you start hiring a source to go hire people, things get out of control really quick. It's already hard enough to control a source that you're not with all the time. But when the source starts hiring what we call subsources, where it's like, you go hire your buddy, but I only talk to you, things get pretty crazy pretty quickly. So I asked the obvious question, like, okay, so that guy was your CHS. Number one, are you sure that Merchant wasn't talking to other people and he didn't hire other snipers? Have we done the proper analysis to see if there was any linkage between anyone in Butler, Pennsylvania, Thomas Crooks, and anybody else that Merchant interacted with? We got blocked, got, crickets on that one, like no answers whatsoever, nothing to see here. If you keep investigating, you keep asking questions, you're going to mess up the trial that's ongoing with Merchant. That's what the FBI always says. So I said, okay, fine. Crooks's devices, his computer, his cell phone, etc. He's an American citizen. So normally the intelligence community wouldn't get to look at that, but he's dead. There's no Fourth Amendment issues. Let's take a look at his devices. And let's see if he was talking to anybody internationally, if there's any international ties here whatsoever. For the first couple months, we were told no one can get into his devices. He's got encryption on them. I said, okay, well, if the FBI can't get into his devices, let's just open it up to the broader community, because we've got the NSA, we've got a huge intelligence community. I think someone's going to be able to get into those devices. Crickets. Fast forward later on, and I actually meet with Dan Bongino, and I asked Dan, did you guys get into the devices? And Dan says, yeah, we got into the devices. So, okay, great. Like, he's like, well, there's nothing there.
Nothing there.
I'm like, there's nothing there. Okay.
I love this guy.
I'm like, if there's nothing there, let's just let us still do our due diligence. Can we at least see, what's in the devices, and maybe there's, potentially foreign ties. If not, fine, but at least we've done our due diligence. Dan says, he'll see what he can do about it.
Yeah.
I said, Dan, can we see the brief that you guys showed the president? Because the president publicly had said he was satisfied with Butler. Later on, behind closed doors, the president said, at least around me, that he wasn't satisfied.
We told you that
with it. Yeah. And then later on, he said to Tucker much later, like a couple months later on, that he was satisfied. So that's what, it's hard to peg where all these different things are.
I'm saying one thing publicly and another thing privately.
Right.
I'm going to believe the private thing almost every time.
Yep. And then a couple months later, and this is like in, I think, August, Dan and I met, or maybe September. Right after that, I think shortly thereafter, that's when Tucker disclosed his investigative journalist had found Crooks's online profile. And Crooks had a prolific online profile, to include interacting with a guy from, I believe it's called the Nordic Resistance Front. I'm not going to try and say his name. It's like a white nationalist group that is a specially designated global terrorist organization by the US. So we are monitoring these people. Thomas Crooks in, I think, 2020, 2021 was in touch with this group. And so to think that he wasn't on our radar in some way, shape, or form, I kind of have a hard time believing that. Can't prove it. But for a while there, we said that, like, there's nothing there. But then Tucker's investigative journalist does, basic internet deep dive researches that most private investigators are capable of doing. And he finds those actual foreign ties. And so again, we still don't know what happened with, Thomas Crooks, who he was linked to. And then at the same time, the investigation of what took place on the ground, that wasn't my purview. But that was like a DHS purview. The DHS Inspector General, also another Trump appointee, he goes in, he starts wanting to run down all the after actions reports. He wants to look into the actions the Secret Service took that day, what other federal agencies were involved, et cetera. He gets blocked from doing so as well. So, okay, that's a data point, like, well, what's going on there? Fast forward to October of 25, and I have the opportunity to share it because this isn't public yet. And I have an opportunity to share this with President Trump. And he says he's not satisfied with Butler. Like, he didn't know that there was a CHS involved with the Merchant case, et cetera.
Without going into anything that, of course, would be privileged and like off the record with the sitting president of the United States, was there any pickup that you got from it that he had continuing fears? Meaning, like, if this got looked into farther and got to some answers that maybe certain people didn't like, his life and people around him would be strongly in danger. Did you pick up on that at all?
No, I didn't. I mean, and I don't think I would. I mean, the president's a pretty strong guy and he presents, a pretty strong persona. He just said that because when you lay out the facts of Butler, like, how can you say you're satisfied with it? He's a smart guy.
Of course.
If you lay that out there, he's just like, yeah, I'm not satisfied with it.
I can't believe tweet about it every day.
Yeah, that's the part that's off.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and now you see again, there's new intel, and this is technically unrelated to Butler, but there's new intel that, like, Trump has been warned by Israeli intelligence that Iran is trying to kill him. Again, it's the same intelligence that has selectively given us stuff that you've laid out that doesn't come to pass and hasn't for decades now at this point, for the most part, and they're running the same narrative on the place that they're upset that we're stopping the war against. And like, the other thing about Iran, great to criticize their regime and all that. And yes, they've funded all these proxies. You fought against them. Like, they're not great. We know that. But they're not suicidal,
right?
In my opinion.
No.
They're fine with some of their people being suicidal. They'll celebrate the martyrs or blow themselves up any day. But, like, they want to exist. And they do know that a country like ours, if we were pissed off enough, has the ability to blow them off the map if we needed to. Not that that would be like publicly supported, but if they, human beings, if they got pissed enough, they could do it. So why on earth, number one, would they try to kill the sitting president? And number two, less explored question here, why didn't they do it while he was out of office for 4 years? Yeah, had a better shot then.
Yeah, I mean, the Iranians, after Soleimani was killed, they publicly said that they were going to avenge Soleimani. I think they had to say a lot of that for domestic consumption. The actions we saw them take, like some of the plots that we saw, they were like pretty weak. They like the Iranians are pretty. So since this war started, the Iranians are actually pretty capable. So then it comes down to like intent versus capability. Like, they had the capability, but they didn't necessarily have the intent. Now, fast forward to where we are now. We've killed the supreme leader. We've killed their head of state / the religious leaders. You now have the son, one of his first, I think, statements he's put out, not publicly, but he put out a written statement. I mean, they're talking about avenging the Ayatollah. They're talking about going after Trump and members of his cabinet. So that, I think, we do have to take pretty seriously.
Sure.
Because we've basically made a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. In the lead up to killing him, there was threats here and there, but none of the plots ever turned out to be very seriously. And this is serious. And this is a problem that, we would always have with the Israelis. They would put something out, and then you'd have to put it into context of like, okay, well, the Israelis clearly, they're giving us this information. Some of it's probably true, but they're giving it to us because they want to influence us,
right,
as well as inform us. So
now you keep describing a lot of these different things today in different contexts as like data point. And you'd like click it and be like, okay. And then eventually, like, it added up so much across so many different things that you took the action you did in March and stepped aside. But when you get in there, and as you described it, like, your first priority was like, all right, let's look into Butler.
Yeah.
And then you start to do that, and you kind of get stonewalled everywhere you go. And you click that data point. I'm just trying to get into the psychology because I'm not you, but like, I'd just love to know how you were thinking. Do you go home one night, and it's not like you can discuss that because it's privileged information, but at least like go for a walk or like sit out on the back deck and say, wait a minute, what's up here? Like, are there moments like that?
Oh, lots. Yeah. And we had a pretty good team there in OD9 that came in with Tulsi. And so we talked about these things quite a bit because we were all working on them together of like, why when we request this from our fellow Trump appointees over at the FBI, like, why aren't they looking for this stuff too? Like, what's going on there? And there's still a lot that I don't know. And I genuinely, I have no idea why people took the actions they did. But a lot of it, I think, it's really easy when you're on the outside to say, like, the system is bad, the system's messed up, and here's how it's messed up. It's really hard when you get on the inside to be.
Let me ask y'all something. Do you think they'll get Trump? Or you think he'll croak at old age?
Part of that, to now be part of that system and to start going after that system, because the system has a way of embracing you and telling you that you're the greatest guy ever. And especially if you're going to lead an organization like the FBI, they've got a way of saying, like, here's your security detail. We'll take you and you can go watch the guys clear the shoot house at the hostage rescue team range. And here's your private plane. You're one of us now. Like, you run this entire thing, or you run the CIA. You're going to run all of our covert action. You're the head spy guy. And so then it's hard for you to turn around and be like, now I'm going to start going after where all the rot is.
Shit, pimp cooking Budweiser soup, Fox. What you think?
Here, these organizations are very good and very proficient, especially the intelligence agencies, at capturing their principles. And I think a lot of that is what has happened in the Trump administration. Unfortunately, a lot of people who I think were very, very good at pointing out why these agencies, these institutions were very flawed and working against the American people when they were on the outside, they got captured by them when they went on the inside.
Did you feel that happening to you at all?
I could be putting Budweiser.
I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, once you're like Senate confirmed, people call you sir. You don't need your own office, and you got a driver, and like it can.
He don't use tomato juice. He uses Budweisers by the quart.
It can totally. Had I not been in the military before and been in the CIA and spent so much time like as a guy on the ground, I could totally see it happening to me. I mean, because it doesn't happen with any nefarious intent. But it just happens because you get told, like, hey, you're running this great organization, and like now you're the head guy that's part of the organization, and here's just what we do every day. And they keep you. I mean, principals can be kept very, very busy. If you don't take steps to like manage your own schedule, you will be managed. They will
feed them shit, keep them in the dark.
Yeah. No, 100%. They'll keep you moving from meeting to meeting. It'll be very important. They'll have an agenda for it, presentations. It's just that the apparatus is very, very proficient at doing that, and usually not really for like any nefarious. I mean, some of it's definitely got some nefarious intent, sure, but most of it's just like that's what these positions do. You're on the director's staff. Your job is to keep him moving from meeting to meeting, and you plan out the schedule. That's what you do. Yeah,
Joe Rogan always had this great line where he'd say, "These people were there before the leaders got there, and they're going to be there after they leave."
100%.
You know it. And so it's like anything that, regardless of politics or policy, whatever you want to say, anything that could threaten just the order of business and how they do things, they're going to find little, even subtle ways or not so subtle ways to quietly divert that from happening. And I think we've seen that over the past 2.5 decades a lot.
A lot. I mean, and this is, if we get a shot at this again, I think we've got to go in like bulls in China shops. I mean,
how would you do that?
I would put people in charge of these organizations. They have, especially in the intelligence community, they have to have a background in at least the IC. Like, you can't walk into the CIA as a guy who's never dealt with. You don't have to have been a CIA officer before. It helps. But you do need to have dealt a good deal with the CIA. You need to know what the Department of Operations, the Director of Operations does, what special activities does. You have to know those things. Same thing with the NSA. You've got to know the lay of the land and know what the organizational priorities are of these different organizations. Number one, to do your duty and to make sure that those organizations are still keeping the American people safe. But then number two, to really start understanding where the rot is. And so you have to have people that are not just your standard pay-to-play political operatives who like, I ran in the primary against the guy and now I'm going to get a cool cabinet position. You've got to have people who like, hey, this is probably going to be the last thing they do in government. And they're okay with that, and they're okay with not getting put on any boards at Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or any of these other great Washington D.C. institutions afterwards.
Washington D.C. I see what you
mean. Yeah. Or I mean, because there's just so many boards, there's so many places that you can go afterwards if you play the game. If you just kind of hold the seat and get your picture on the wall, and you go receive awards and you go visit people at different outposts and say everyone's doing a great job. There's going to be a great job for you somewhere in Northern Virginia or Washington D.C. on a board or a think tank or university, etc. We need people who don't want any of that crap. Nothing to do with it. We have a good cadre right now, I think, of experienced people from the war on terror and from the intelligence community who understand where the rot is. We brought a lot of them in, ODNI. Unfortunately, a lot of them have kind of gotten pushed out. We've had a lot of whistleblowers come out, I think, in the last 5-6 years in these different organizations that could go in and say, I want to stay single-minded, focus on what the true mission of this organization is, cut out all the fluff, and start exposing a lot of the rot, which is going to be very unpleasant, I think, for the U.S. government writ large. But if we don't, my fear is that if we don't do that soon, if we don't start exposing a lot of the places where the intelligence community has kind of gone off the rails, if we don't do that soon, eventually this next generation that's coming up, they're going to say, like, I don't even think we need, and we just need to shut the entire thing down. Like the bounce back effect from what we've had so far, from all the dishonesty, all the corruption, all the lies, it's going to be such a boomerang effect that I think it's going to make the country, it's going to put the country in a very unsafe place. So if we don't get people who are like, this is going to be the last thing I do in government.
I was trying to find Snaggy on Instagram. I was going to fucking call him, but I can't find him.
Potentially even professionally, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to start exposing the rot. If we don't have those people in and we let this system continue, I'm afraid it will implode on itself.
Yeah, I mean, you see more and more people out there, and I understand it, who are like, get rid of all of it. But at the same time, the way that, let's say, some of the really awful corruption that's existed in some of these places has been allowed to continue to exist, as they've been able to manipulate and distract the public again and again and again over the decades. So that when, like they had the Church Commission in the 70s.
Yeah.
CIA is still strong and powerful today.
Still going.
You know what I mean? So they find a way to move the ball off it. And like you even talked about the 12-day war and how it escalated, I think you said, pretty quickly, and that something changed with Trump. And I don't know what that was. It's pure spec for me to say this. I got no proof of this kind of thing. But Dave, there was kind of like a big tweet Friday, June 6, 2025, where you had Elon and Trump go at each other, and then suddenly we're in Iran, boom, like a week later. I see shit like that and I go, data point, to use your term.
Yeah.
Could you see why the average guy out there like me is sitting there listening to this right now and thinking that, like, yeah, maybe, then we did the Somalian fraud thing. A week later, did the Venezuela thing. That was 2 weeks after they released the Epstein files on a Friday before Christmas. And then another big one came out. That was a big problem. So 4 weeks later, we're in Iran all the way. Like, could you see why people think like this and just see that it's like distraction after distraction after distraction?
Yeah. And then we turn around and we say, like, how dare you talk about Jeffrey Epstein still? I mean, it's come on. This is not what we ran on in 2024. And so if we're not more forthright and honest about what these things truly are with the American people, like, again, the whole system, I'm afraid is going to implode. And again, like the number of data points that we've had, not just in this administration, but if we step back in like the 2020 timeframe with COVID and everything else that's come out, like, there's a reason why your average person who's generally informed right now is starting to think like, hey, our government actually is always doing the opposite of what they tell us. And they're always working against us. Like, they have really, really good reason to think that right now. And again, my fear as a guy who served my country for 20 plus years is that, like, pretty soon here, the whole bottom's going to fall out of this whole thing, because at the end of the day, we have a pretty high trust society. But if people think like their votes don't matter, if they start thinking that, like, no matter who I vote for, I get another stupid war in the Middle East, inflation goes up even more, my intelligence agencies are spying on me and taking away my civil liberties, that is going to erode the entire system faster than the financial collapse we were just talking about.
Yeah, and then they can't pay for groceries.
Yeah,
they're putting data centers everywhere for Peter Thiel,
and flock cameras so they can stalk us and tell us, this is because we win in AI. We need to monitor absolutely everything that you guys are doing. Like, I'm sorry, like, I have a problem with that.
Motherfuckers,
of course. I'm glad you do.
Somebody that watches me, they made a post about them flock cameras, said they followed somebody all the way to, I guess, maybe a different state, to a dispensary. And then when they got back home, they fucking pulled them over and arrested them for having marijuana. But yet there's so many missing kids and shit that they're not using them flock cameras for the right reasons. I'm going to tell you, I'm against some flock cameras. Nobody should have the right to be able to track your every fucking movement. They're treating you like a criminal, and they try to act like it's for your safety. And just like I made a point the other day, Once they get all these flock cameras in place, all these bad cops that's barely got a job, they're fired. They're fired. And they're going to be back out in the work community with everybody they've been an asshole to. And it's going to be fun times for them.
I don't trust my government.
Now, to be a cynic for a minute, I don't like being a cynic. I'll admit when it comes to the government, I'm a bit of a cynic, though. You know, you talk about like, if we get another shot at this, you know, whoever it is, we got to go in there and do it right. And you laid out some of the ways you would do that. But there's a lot of people out there thinking right now, regardless of Donald Trump's like politics, they're going, well, technically this was the outsider.
Yeah.
This was, you know, the guy who was like, I'm self-funding my campaign and all that, who, you know, was coming in and was going to drain the swamp and was going to put people like you in charge and stuff and support them even when it was some points maybe they didn't want to hear. And yet here we sit, you know, and it appears to be the opposite in a lot of ways. Could you see why people out there are like, Joe, that's an amazing idea. And I believe you want to do it, but that's not going to happen.
Oh, no, I totally get that. And that's another thing that I'm the younger generation is very informed and I love the way they think. My fear with the younger generation is that they're going to say like, yeah, I tried that in 24 and I got screwed. Right. And so I'm just not going to participate anymore. Or they're going to go completely the other direction and they're going to go with one of the more socialist leaning candidates and say like, okay, like let's actually try that now. So I think there is a pathway where we could get another shot at this, but I do think we have to keep the scope very, very narrow. And a lot of it is going to be involved in educating the people on, you know, some of the reasons why I think Trump went off the rails. A lot of it is money. I mean, he to a certain, you can't say that over $200 million from Miriam Adelson,
232,
didn't influence him, and that's just her. I mean, that doesn't include the rest of the pro-Israel apparatus. So we have to say like, hey, sometimes these candidates aren't going to have as much money as the next guy, but we've got to be able to either through small dollar donors raise the money ourselves, or just be willing to have a true grassroots campaign and support people who say, and that we can check in on, that they're just simply not taking the money. I think that's going to be a huge part of it.
Yeah. Now, another thing that's come up a lot that I don't know what to think, because it's just like kind of all over the place, is like the relationship intelligence community wise between the United States and Israel. And obviously this is all now top of mind with Section 219 and all that stuff potentially going through, which we can talk about. But what's always been interesting to me is any intelligence guy I've talked to, and I'm going to put this on a scale of Andrew Bustamante to John Kiriakou, from one end of the spectrum to the other. Whenever I have asked them off camera, and then eventually it's been on camera too, about their relationship with Israeli intelligence, I have never heard a positive word in my life from any of them. Yeah. And it is people I've talked to before that haven't been on the podcast, people that have been on the podcast who were in other agencies as well. There seems to be a unanimous consideration that they are fucking annoyed. And so that's different. that's different than the diplomatic relationship you see in, say, Congress and Senate and, you know, where there's politics and stuff like that. But you see a lot of this thing online where people are like, well, CIA and Mossad are one and the same. I mean, I guess I'm open to the argument, but how can it be that way when so many people there, at least behind, you know, maybe publicly they say one thing, but behind the scenes, you know, there seems to be a lot of disagreement there. So maybe the better way to ask it is, as someone who now lived in the intelligence apparatus, did you find that there was a different opinion among a large group of people within the intelligence agencies about our relationship with Israeli and specifically with their intelligence agencies?
Yeah, I mean, at the ground, like operational level, I mean, what you described is pretty accurate. I think most of us, though,
I'd like to see that shit over with. I don't want to send all my fucking tax money to another country. I'm never going over there. What the fuck do I need to send my money over there for? Why do the government feel the need to send our money over there? We got too many people hurting over here. We should be taking care of our damn troops and our damn retired military before we worry about another country about anything. Until they're squared away, we shouldn't be doing nothing for nobody else.
So, especially if you're more of a special operations guy, I
don't know what that takes.
We have a lot of respect for the Mossad. I mean, the operations that those guys can carry out, the targeted assassinations, the way that they're able to run proxies, support agents, what they did in the early phases of the 12-Day War, very impressive. That's stuff that like we we aspire to do in some theaters, and we just haven't been able to do. Like they're good at what they do, so there is a healthy respect there. However, if you work with them for a while, there does come an annoyance where, you know, a lot of partners that we work with, they will kind of ask us constantly for things, which is to be expected. But they still are deferential to us in the sense they know that we're the world's most powerful nation and we're funding them, and they need it more than we need them. With the Israelis, you don't get that. With the Israelis, best case, they'll shoot you straight like a peer. But a lot of times there's an entitlement that comes with that of like, you know, you guys are going to end up doing this anyways. And a lot of times they end up being right, because the problem is why people will say the CIA and the Mossad are joined at the hip, because the CIA director in a lot of cases will end up being, it's a political appointee, chosen by the president. The president needs to show the donors that he's going to put one of their guys there. I mean, at the beginning of this administration, you had the head of AIPAC bragging on camera
about Ratcliffe,
and about a guy who I like, Mike Waltz, being the national security advisor. So if you can short circuit that system, I think the way that you put stopgaps in there is you grab guys that have been out in the field who, you know, the president needs to feel that he politically aligns with them, that he's one of their guys, but that's who needs to be in charge of these organizations, as opposed to the guy who owes his political career to AIPAC, who then is a favor to the donor that donated to President Trump to be in charge of one of the intelligence agencies. That's how you sever that joint at the hip. And then we can start treating the Israelis like any other liaison partner. Like some things are good, some things are bad. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. This is a good relationship. I think we're just so far removed from that with the Israelis.
Now, you said you had a chance to listen to Rogan with JD Vance.
I did,
on the way here. So Amanda and I were listening to like maybe 40 minutes of it on 2.0 speed before. So we got like the middle of it right there. But JD had kind of was like the same week where Trump started to say some things like, yeah, you don't need to blow up the whole building or whatever. And things like that. JD went out and suddenly it felt a little bit gloves off with saying, hey, let's cut the shit here, which, okay, cool. Some of us are like, well, this is 2 years and 1.2 million people displaced too late, but all right, it's better than nothing. What did you think of what I picked up on as like a little bit of talking out of both sides of his ass with Rogan?
He's got.
I don't want to put words in.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's got a tough job. I mean, like I think at some point in the Rogan interview, he even said like, my job is to support the president, not opine on his policies. I don't think it's too far out of school for me to say like JD was probably one of the more skeptical people about the war. I mean, even the president has come out and said that.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode.
Why did he re-drop this? See, that's what confused me. Oh, shit.
It might be worth it. You know what I mean? Isn't that what it's about? Being in the truth. When you want to know the truth, wouldn't you fight for your children if you fucking knew that they'd never have the opportunity to own anything, but they'd be happy as long as they comply to what they're being told to do, you know? Here in Canada, they're outlawing, and it sounds good. You know,
you can't make this
media for kids 16 and under or whatever.
Let's go watch some of Crazy Carl's fucking TikToks. You want to get a laugh? They are roasting
I don't see how they're going to be able to do it.
It ain't just me. He tries to pretend like I'm just hating on him, but they are fucking torching his ass on TikTok. Any social media he goes on, though, man. I hate it for him because he's too fucking stupid to realize what's going on. I don't think Carl's a bad dude. But you can't force somebody to believe your way. Here you go, pimp. This is the first thing he pulled up.
Quiet on the creek. Quiet on the creek.
There you go, pimp.
Quiet on the creek. Quiet on the creek. Gotta be real quiet on the creek. Quiet on the creek. Quiet on the creek. Gotta be quiet. Quiet on the creek. Gotta be real
She a little too skinny for you, though, ain't she, buddy?
Quiet on the creek. Quiet on the creek. Quiet on the creek. Gotta be quiet. Well, if the Feitzmeister is such a superstar, then why wouldn't he just say what he did? Why would he just back up what he did? You know what I mean? When you have nothing to worry about, you can say. You people are fucking pathetic. Congratulations. Congratulations. They got you fighting. They got you fighting over whether or not you're allowed to go in the fucking woods. A, to comply, A, to fucking, it's for your safety. It's for all of our safety, right? Come on, guys. You guys, like, there's nothing to do with lithium or anything.
This motherfucker, boy.
Congratulations. Congratulations. They got you fighting. They got you fighting over whether or not you're allowed to go in the fucking woods. A, to comply, A, to Hey, buddy, do you pay attention to women and women's sports? Look to me like the NBA players are more about inclusivity than they are about biology. You know what I mean? You go check for yourself, bro. And as far as women's professional sports,
I know a dude in Canada playing in women clothing.
They're trying to build their sports right now. There's not too many that can bring a stadium in, and well, the WNBA is there, right? You know, the women have built that thing up. Finally, that people are finally paying attention. But yeah, bro, yeah, it's happening. I don't care. Come on now.
Let's talk about no contact.
Oh, how in the hell did we get kicked off of his shit?
Hey, buddy, do you? Hey, bud, I think you should give me an apology. I haven't drank for a very long time.
Buddy. You can come in here. Come.
I walked through my shadow, bud, and God showed me that, well, I could be quite evil on alcohol with bad spirits. You know what I mean? So I decided to be with God and try and better myself there, bud. So can you please stop spreading rumors or lies or your assumptions out onto the world, bud? Because it's just fucking humanoids, eh? They'd rather have material shit over their own kids. And we wonder what kind of fucking world we're living in and why it's so stupid, eh? Fuck. I think the people of Ontario need to stand up to old Dougie Ford and say, hey, we're not getting any data centers here in Ontario until we get that data out of your cell phone that you made illegal for us to know. Because if you guys don't know, data centers, they collect data.
Nah.
Knowledge on you guys. But you're not allowed to know the knowledge on Doug Ford and what he's doing to control you. You know what I mean? You think you got the power to shut me up there, pumpkin? What?
That motherfucker says, shut up. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's not men and women's spaces. It's trans women. Stop speaking for women. Most women don't care, and they certainly don't need you. No shit.
What are you gonna do when God's people show up and they tell you we're taking your rainbow from you, bud, and we're giving it back to God? The rainbow is for all of God's people, and we're gonna take the sexuality right out of it, bud. We're not living your fantasies anymore. We're gonna go by science. You know what I mean? Biology. We're not gonna put up with your bullshit,
bro. If we're going by science, why don't you let them fucking give you the medical medicine that they've scientifically proven would help you, fucking moron.
I haven't said any hateful things, not one. Give women their spaces. Trans want their spaces. Give them their spaces. But you want to be in everybody else's space because you want us to believe what's in between your fucking space between your ears, bud. And I'm not having it. You're sick in the head, bud. That's just my opinion, and I'm allowed to have it. And I'll never shut up.
I know. Joe's been trying to get you to shut up for a long time, ain't she?
I just tell the truth.
Mr. Whibley, what makes you want men in women's spaces? It's just not the sports, bud. It's the places and spaces, you know what I mean? Like, I've seen, maybe I'm being tricked and fooled, but they're putting them in women's shelters. and women jail and stuff like that. I think we're in a big spiritual war, Mr. Whipley. And I think you got the spirit of Beelzebub. And I don't think the spirit of Beelzebub is going to do you very well.
This poor little motherfucker.
I think that might drive you. Hey, buddy, do you pay attention to women and women's sports? Look to me like the NBA players are more about inclusivity than they are about biology. You know what I mean? You go check for yourself, bro. And as far as women's professional sports, they're trying to build their sports right up right now. There's not too many that can.
Hey, Orange Pig, America first. Oops. Oh boy, that was the slogan.
It's the waffle here, dear bear. And well, you have a problem with me using your comment, but no problems with George Bush and his plus lie that took lives. Like, I thought Donald Trump was getting rid of men and women's sports. I thought he was going to be the man of common sense. But he must not have the power that he thinks he has. You know what I mean? He can't even get a bunch of dicks out of women's sports. The guy's a joke, but yet he's the commander in chief. And like, you can't get men out of women's sports, and you expect us to think that this Iran war thing, you know what I mean, too? He thought he was winning that. And it just keeps going on and on. That man is such a powerless joke.
You think he ever gets tired of fucking talking to himself?
Well, hey, bud, I thought Lucifer was supposed to be a tough guy, but seeing that you're all in your fifis there, bud, and you can't really read and make things out for yourself, wasn't judging you. In fact, if I was judging anybody, it was the Christians. I said, how is this world where a guy that says his name is Lucifer cares about the elite pedophiles and the Christians don't? So I don't know how you got all
What's
in
up,
your
Ready
fifis
Randy?
and then try and judge
We checking in on my crazy cousin Carl.
me and take away my Jesus. I don't care if you want Jesus, bud. Stick with Lucy. I don't care. It's up to you, bud. I want you. Jesus wants you, but you got free will, pumpkin. Listen, Matthew, I don't know how many times I got to tell you about. I think you're in a bad state of brainwashing. You know what I mean? Jesus warned the world that we would be in a state like this, Matthew. You think bad is good and good is bad. You know what I mean, buddy? The world's in an awful state. That's what I think, but I might be wrong.
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees.
Do you know how hard it is for someone with common sense to sit there and watch how the American public treats George Bush? Do you know how absolutely ridiculous it is to sit there and watch him get cheered at baseball games and stuff? I mean, just my opinion, and you guys can let me know where I'm wrong.
Ain't George Bush dead?
But if you go...
It's home again, my bad.
Hell is what you go through, and heaven is what you make out of it.
All you people out there still looking for the Epstein files, eh? That's not what you should be looking for. What you should be looking for is the investigation on the Epstein files, which, if you guys know, the American intelligence isn't very intelligent. And there was really no investigation, because you would think with the names in the list, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Lex Wex, I don't know, to me, I don't get how she's a superhero.
And I believe Candace Owens celebrates it every night.
You speak for yourself, Dan. Not all of us are a stan.
I got a tidbit of information for Justin Trudeau. You don't have to worry about the RCMP. You don't have to worry about your court cases. You should start worrying about God, bud. You and your buddy Klaus suck.
I don't know. I think Mark Carney spends too much of Canada's money on death and destruction over there in Ukraine.
Oh, there's his boyfriend right here. Carl's in love with this motherfucker.
Will you believe?
Hey, buddy, if Donald Trump is such a good man because he doesn't drink alcohol, and that makes him exceptional, well, I guess we all got to find out who our God is. Well, a lot of the people who got it weren't bad people. They just did as they were trained to do. We're trained to trust our government because we get to pick them. We're given the illusion of a choice. So therefore, we trust. I'm not saying this is true, but what if you're part of a big psyop and you're paying for it too? What if all this...
The most religious people in the world are the people who lead countries.
Oh, there he is, responding to his own comments.
The most pressure, the most is at stake. Like, they thought this through. I'm not saying they're all Baal worshipers or Satanists, or I'm not saying that, but they believe.
Yeah, I've been trying to tell the Americans forever, hey, you guys are paying the tariffs. They just kept calling me an idiot, telling me I was stupid, thinking they were going to get a $2,000 check somewhere. But then when those tariffs were deemed illegal, see, I'm a believer in God. America's not going to do anything about it neither. Fauci's just a flavor of the week to get the eyeballs on that. Trump's already came out and said, no, Biden's pardon. She's good. Fauci monster, he can do whatever he wants to. I listed my points in the video, and it's your job to prove where my points are wrong in order to come to me and ask me what my point is. The problem is you don't get the point because you've been brainwashed to not care what the point is.
Carl, the problem
You know
is nobody gets the point you're trying to make.
Okay, bud. You got to let me know where and how because, well, what do you think Klaus Schwab means when he's penetrated more than half of our government? Oh, man, I tell you, I'm so sick of people falling for Como and Lemon and all this bullshit. Hey, it's so weird listening to Hunter Biden talk about being moral. Well, if they own the rest of the world, when they... It's so weird listening. Oh, man, I tell you, I'm so sick of people falling for Como and Lemon. Okay, bud.
All right.
You got to
There's a reason why I backed this up, okay? He's wearing the same shirt on 7/29.
It's so...
Here it is, 7/28, same shirt.
America's not going to do it. See, I'm...
All right, so on the 30th.
America's... Oh, man, I tell you, it's so weird. Well, if they... Jesus did say many would be deceived because... Hey, bud, I don't think we should talk anymore. We're on two different wavelengths, you and I, there, Pumpkin. So, hope you get out of your mind control. Watch what you listen to. Why don't you, because with all your intelligence, why don't you let me know?
Carl, why don't you dig that booger out of your nose? You do realize you got about a fucking 3-inch booger coming out of your right nostril, right? Before you turn that camera on.
Where I'm the moron. Where
oh, that's nasty. Jesus
I
Christ.
personally never understood why Obama was.
Here we are on the 26th, and he's still wearing the same fucking shirt.
Investigated. I don't know, bud. It's probably the Christians that are. I sometimes
Here's the
wonder,
25th,
is it the
same
Americans
shirt.
who like screwing children? Okay. Hey, Daniel, watch yourself, bud. This is one of the swine from my YouTube. This is the guy who runs around and tries to convince people that I'm a pedophile and I've touched my child. He's went to such lengths as to try and tell people that I took my father-in-law out.
That really bothers
Even
him,
if
don't
it
it?
isn't imagined.
Carl, how do you think we felt when we seen you and your fucking talking to your wife about being in your kid's room at 3 a.m.? That's not normal, buddy.
Friend, bud. What's your problems with it? I think it makes me a better person, but I refuse to get a hold of the new reality of which extraordinary claims are you talking about, bud? The one where I tell you, hey, bud, I don't got to, which I refuse, even if it isn't a matter.
Right. So we're on the 24th.
Which extraordinary. Hey, bud, I don't got to. Hey, bud, I'm just saying I might not be right.
Your government.
This is why Canada's failing. It's men like you, Paul, who have no balls, no brains, no understanding of anything. Listen, your government put an Emergencies Act, which was illegal. I don't know, buddy. I don't think you pay attention too well because her comment was insulting. Listen, Michael, your opinion doesn't matter because you're a Canadian, bud. And listen, I forgive you for calling me a weirdo. It's because you're brainwashed. You don't even know you're brainwashed. You don't even know that you're building a shitty world for the children. Hey, bud, America better hope that Trump's their savior and not Satan, bud, because... Hey, Pumpkin, I don't stand for a flag, nor do I flag any comment. Listen, Sunshine, we don't think the same, okay? Listen, I took the real Alyssa Milano. I used to have a crush on her. I took her comment.
This is somebody getting on his ass about fucking with that lady that went through MAID. She was dying. She had some what's that shit makes you forget? And some other shit. AS. And she was having herself, taken out. And Carl went over there. Oh, it was weird, man.
I love you. And I winked and I kissed at her. And you got yourself your pants in a in a bunch there. And I don't know. I was just making a bookmarking too. You know what I mean? I think I work for God. I think Alyssa Milano is a real witch, perhaps. And that's only because. Hey, bud, if PP was really great, he'd be telling you guys who's been. We should all feel sorry for Donald Trump. Hey, James, I don't care if you take me seriously or not, bud. I only want to be taken seriously by God. That's it, Father. You know what I mean? I don't really care what you think. You know what I mean? I think the world is one big pedophile protector there, James. And if you're not willing to bring me the information back to prove my videos that I say where I'm wrong, I can clearly be wrong. You know, I'm only human, James, but here's the deal, though, Bucko. I tell you, I'm a child of God. I'm trying. Thanks for. Maybe if Yeshua is having problems bringing his people to. Yeah, bud. Carney's doing a great. Hey, Daniel, just an update for you there, buddy. Listen, bud. The only thing that's up over here, Cameo told you, the word is up. You know what I mean? And the word is truth. And truth is the word. And really, the word loves you, bud. And
fuck you.
I love you.
Elbows up.
I gotta tell you, it's just my opinion. You would think Benny Johnson wouldn't be spreading misinformation out there. You want to give it to my country, do you? You would think Benny Johnson. You want to give it to my country, do you? Hey, we're all a bunch of idiots, eh? Give it to us, eh? Our country's burning down and. Hey, bud, it may look like.
All right, enough of fucking with this idiot.
Daniel.
Enough of fucking with this idiot. Oh, car. We need to hook him and Snaggy up. They can argue with one another all day. That would be a good live. If we could just get them two together. All right, y'all. I'm out of here. I appreciate y'all chilling. Y'all stay straight. And except for you, pimp, I don't ever expect to see you straight. The day I see you straight, might be like end to the world or something. Peace.